Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Nittany No Huddle Podcast. From Philadelphia to Los Angeles and everywhere in between. Filmed at the Nittany No Huddle studio. It's Jordo, Zach, and Coach Devin covering all things Penn State football all the time.
This is from 45 and it's blocked. Lions scoop it up. Brad Haley will score.
And here we go.
All right, welcome back, Nittany No Huddle Nation. I got myself, Coach Devin, and Zach here on the line. Today we're going to be looking at Penn State hosting Iowa for the annual Whiteout, 7:30 p.m. CBS primetime football. I'm excited. I'm going to the game. I know Devin and Zach both going to watch the game. So coming off the Illinois game, some questions on offense, but some recent news. Penn State has moved up in the power index on ESPN. I don't know if many people follow that, but they're currently ranked 6th, most recent FPI for ESPN. So Penn State swapped spots with Texas. Thought that was kind of interesting. Really looking forward to this game. What do you guys think? I know, Devin, you got some history facts for us as usual. So either turn it over to you or Zach.
Yeah, I don't have a ton. I'm really excited. I think this should be a really good test for Penn State, a game that we got kind of lucky that Iowa got ranked in the top 25, so we can get that ranked win this week. Penn State is 17-14 all time against Iowa. I didn't write it down. I forget the number. I literally was just looking at it. 14 out of the 31 previous matchups were decided by one possession or less. Well, I mean, I guess you can't have less than one possession, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So 14 out of 31, that's pretty crazy. This will be the 15th annual full stadium whiteout. Penn State doesn't have a great record. They're 8-6 in those, but as Zach always brings up when people say that, they're playing the Ohio States and Michigans almost every year in the whiteout. 1 year was against Alabama. 1 year was against Notre Dame. Like teams that are good. That's the whole point of the whiteout. So I don't put too much stock into the record being 8-6. I saw somebody on Instagram earlier say that a normal home field advantage is maybe a 2 to 3 point swing, depending on where it's at. And the whiteout's like a 7-point swing. Might be a little extreme, but the whiteout matters, and I think it helps. And Penn State always plays well in whiteout games. I can only think of like maybe one game where they did not even play well at all. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a good one. Zach, do you have anything before Jordo takes over?
No, you covered a lot of it. I think Iowa is one of those teams, especially for Penn State fans of a certain vintage, like that just always, no matter how good or bad they are coming into the game, they're just a team that like historically gives Penn State fits. I think there was, I want to say it was like 2000 to 2000, maybe it was like 98 to 2000. There was like an 8 or 9 year stretch where Penn State did not beat Iowa. And they actually, of all of the non-Ohio State, Michigan teams in the Big Ten, they have had probably more success in Beaver Stadium than any other Big Ten team. I look back at 2009 is kind of, when I think of this matchup, I kind of am reminded of 2009. So for some of our younger listeners, that was a Penn State team coming off of a Big Ten title and a Rose Bowl appearance. I think Penn State was ranked number 5. It was a late September, early October matchup. 4. And Penn State it was a night game. I don't know if it was the whiteout, but it was like a primetime night game. Iowa maybe was unranked, and they came in and beat Penn State 21-10 and just physically dominated the defense, special teams. Adrian Claiborne blocked a punt. So that when I think of this game, I think the similarities are there, but I think that obviously there's so much that's different between from a Penn State perspective. Obviously, Iowa is the exact same Iowa that you had in 2009. They're going to try to beat you with special teams and defense, and just try to not shoot themselves in the foot with offense. But there's a lot of, and I don't know how we made it this far without Matt mentioning the 6-4 score in 2002. So there's a lot of history.
Game of the century.
When these two teams lock up, there's just a lot of history there.
Was it 6-4? For some reason,
6-4. That was 2004. Yeah, we could probably spend a whole episode on that, and the disrespect, just the disrespect that Kirk Ferentz showed. This is the part that people don't realize.
Yeah,
it was 6-2 with like 8 minutes to go, and they were in the back of their own end zone punting, and they decided to take a safety to avoid, the potential for a blocked punt or punting it, and the punter shanks it and Penn State has the ball to 20. They had so little respect for the Penn State offense and this wasn't with like 30 seconds to go. Again, this was 8 minutes. They decided to take a safety. And I don't think teams were really doing that at the time. You see that now more often, but they
the end of
willingly took a
games.
safety. Yeah, like when there's like a minute left or 30 seconds or whatever. And sure enough, it worked out because they gave the ball back to Penn State, and offensively, Penn State, if you remember the 2004 season, could literally do nothing right offensively, but
punted it right back to them.
Just a game that you'll never with the changes to the rules and just the changes on offense, you'll never see anything like that ever again, and maybe for good reason.
Set football back about 100 years there. But yeah, so speaking of the defense, Penn State defense, this is a stat I wasn't aware of. Outside of garbage time with second and third string in, Penn State has given up 7 points to West Virginia, 7 points to Delaware, and 6 to Illinois. That's pretty impressive from a defensive side. I know Iowa's defenses looked pretty good. They did get beat on a big play last week, but I mean, we saw that against Delaware as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's just one missed assignment in your coverage and they're gone. So that can happen. Looking at Iowa's offense, we got Cade McNamara, transfer from Michigan. Hasn't looked great, to be honest. I went back and rewatched all 3 games they played. And maybe it's from the lingering injury from last year still. But he has, I know we talk about happy feet with Aller a little bit. He's got bad happy feet and the double clutch a lot. And I think that part of that translated to the sacks that he took last week. I think they got sacked 5 times against Western Michigan. No,
Western Michigan. I think it was 4 times, but
4 times. Well, 2 of those were him just basically holding the ball way too long. So we'll see if they clean that up this week. But through 3 games, Iowa beat Utah State 24-14, Iowa State 20-13, and Western Michigan 41-10. And that's just not good offensive football. And their offensive coordinator might be on the hot seat because he has a clause in his contract. He has to score more than 25 points a game. Now, right now, he's at 28.3, but coming into Happy Valley, knowing Iowa's history, I don't think they're going to score a lot of points. And Cade McNamara, some of his stats on the season, he's 38 for 71, not particularly great, 417 total yards. And here's the big stat: 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And 2 of those were last week. And they were very bad interceptions, in my opinion. But what do you guys see from Iowa's offense or defense? I'll let you pick which one you want to talk about first. Go ahead,
I'll
Zach.
go first. Yeah, I mean, I think both. I'll try to cover a little bit of both. It's cliche. If you listen to Franklin's press conference today, I'll probably sound a lot like what he said, but it's the same old Iowa, and it kind of sounds a little disrespectful to the coaching staff, but so be it.
He meant it as a compliment, though. I wrote down the same quote.
That's what he said.
He said they have tremendous pride in their identity and they know who they are. I mean, as a coach, a lot of coaches want that in their program. Sure, you want to be adaptable, and there's some fault to Kirk Ferentz for not being adaptable, but I actually do think Franklin meant it as a compliment. I mean, maybe not, maybe it is coach speak, but I didn't feel like it was a dig whenever I listened to the press conference. But
no, I mean, he definitely went out of his way to make sure that it wasn't perceived as such. Who knows what he's thinking inside? But he definitely tried to make it sound good. But I think it's just the type of thing where there are years when Iowa has some studs, like especially defensively. Maybe I'll start on the defensive side where they've got, if you remember, like a linebacker like Josie Jewell that they had in 16 and 17. It was matching up with Saquon Barkley, or cornerbacks like Desmond King, and they may have one in Cooper DeJean. I think is a pretty good cornerback. I just feel like they don't have. They've had some really good defensive linemen over the years. I just don't think they have a lot of guys right now that are just making huge impacts, and I think they kind of need a few of those guys. The way they play defense is, they basically line up in that cover 2 shell. They play a lot of 2 high safety. They'll play man underneath that, and for the most part, they want to get after the quarterback with just bringing their front four, right? They don't want to overcommit. They kind of want to keep everything in front. And when they've got a really good defensive line, it's difficult because they're going to sit back and they play a lot of zone, and the front four are going to get to you, and it's going to force you into mistakes. And when they can't get there, and when they can't stop the run, I don't want to say it's easy, but like they're not known for throwing a lot of exotic stuff at you. So it's the type of thing where if you prepare right and you execute, there's a lot of room for success there, and you're unlikely to go into the game and see something that you just had no idea or had no expectation that they were going to throw at you. Same thing offensively. Like, it's real simple, and a lot of teams are this way, but maybe none more so than Iowa. They want to run the ball. They want to establish the run game. They want to take the pressure off the quarterback. They've wanted to use their nobody uses their tight ends better than Iowa over the last 20 years. And that's one thing that going into this matchup, they lost Luke Lachey, who was their star tight end in the Western Michigan game. He looks like he's out for the year. I think they may have actually announced that today. That is a position where they had some depth, though. Eric All, that's a name that some Penn State fans may remember from Michigan, actually, playing with Cade McNamara 2 years ago in Beaver Stadium. He's the one who caught that simple little 4-yard crossing pattern late in the game that on a busted coverage was able to run up the sideline and score that go-ahead game-winning touchdown. But they're gonna try to feature him. I think they have to. I think they don't really have star receivers. They have Nico Ragaini. That's a guy that's back that has given Penn State trouble. I just think they're going to have to utilize the tight end, get the running game going, probably try to use the running backs in the pass game. Iowa's typically a good screen team. They don't really have a lot of threats that scare you offensively. And this is a game where with McNamara not being super mobile, Jordan referenced that other teams have been able to get to him this year. Again, I go back to, if you're Penn State and you have that pass rush that you think you have, and you have that really athletic the front seven that we think we have, it's a game where we should be living in the backfield, making life miserable for McNamara. And if you play that complementary football and you get ahead and you make them throw because they have to, not allow them to throw only when they want to, that's just going to be problems for Iowa.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Defensively, Iowa's looked terrific, to be honest. They've held teams to under 286 yards, including only 193 in the air. Now, granted, the quarterbacks they're playing aren't great. The teams they're playing aren't really great. But their coverage has been really electric, and the run defense has been pretty good too. So it's going to be interesting to see, with what's perceived as our offense kind of struggling last week, how that translates to this game. And hopefully we make the corrections. I mean, Vegas isn't really giving Iowa a chance. 14 points is what the spread is right now. Mm-hmm. And part of that, like you mentioned, Devin, 7 being for the Whiteout, so maybe truly like a 10-point spread, but still that's a lot of points. I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa covers. The weather is supposed to be absolute shit. Yeah. So I got my poncho packed already, got to stay dry. I think it's going to be a messy game, so hopefully we get our run game going, but Iowa has a pretty decent running back, LaShawn Williams. 19 carries for 164 yards. Pretty respectable numbers for Iowa's offense, but I'm excited. I think McNamara, this is a proving game for him. So we'll see if we can get the pressure on him. He doesn't look good under pressure. He holds the ball way too long, at least through the first 3 games, but we'll see how it goes. What do you think, Devin?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of circle back to some of the things that you and Zach have said, totally agree on McNamara. I said in our preseason podcast that I thought he would be the difference, and this Iowa team could be different because they are who they are, but they finally had that guy at quarterback, and McNamara has not been that guy yet. And like you both said, could be some of the lingering injuries, could still be getting accustomed. I mean, I know that's kind of a lame excuse, but McNamara is not known for having this big arm talent. It's just not really his skill set. And Iowa doesn't really have flashy standout wide receivers. So I think maybe he's still trying to get accustomed to what he needs to do in this offense, who he's throwing it to. And now losing Luke Lachey, who was his leading target through 3 games, again, that puts a lot of pressure on him to try to be successful. Yes, Eric All is really good. Yes, Nico, not your puppy, but Nico Ragaini. He caught the go-ahead touchdown in 2021 that we all hated. And and he's a 6th-year guy. He's older than Sean Clifford. I mean, at some point, you got to figure that defenses have a lot of film on him and know what he's good at, what he's not good at. But other than that, I don't. None of their wide receivers impress me. Obviously, one's going to have a breakout game because it's at Penn State and it's a national television. One of the white slot guys will have a great game, like Chuck Sizzle. Running back wise, you mentioned LaShawn Williams. LaShawn Williams is actually the backup, so that's something to keep an eye on. Their starter was Caleb Johnson. He didn't play last week. He was dinged up, and last I heard, he's questionable for this week. I could be wrong. It is still pretty early in the week that we're recording this, but he is listed as questionable according to the sources that I looked at today. If he doesn't play, I think that's a big deal because then your backups are freshmen. So rather than having that 1-2 combo of Caleb Johnson, LaShawn Williams, now you're asking a redshirt freshman and a true freshman to get carries in this type of an environment when, like Jordan said, it's not going to be very pretty weather as it's trending. It's trending to be pretty sloppy, poor weather to where they're going to ask their running backs to run the ball a lot. The one last thing about Iowa's offense, I think that of the Iowa offensive lines over the last few years, this might be the weakest. I'm really not incredibly impressed. And I know Jordan brought up that there was 4 sacks against Western Michigan, and at least 2 were 100% Cade McNamara's fault. Maybe 3. The third one I think you could kind of go either way. But I'm not super impressed with their offensive line. Obviously, Connor Colby is pretty good. He's their is he their left tackle? No. He's their right guard. He's a projected 3rd-round draft pick as of now, but I feel like for that to be their highest lineman, like that doesn't seem really high for what Iowa usually does. I remember Nick DeJong, however you say his name. I remember him being pretty solid last year, but I think their line is susceptible. And Zach, I'd maybe like your opinion on this. Somebody asked Franklin today, I don't know who it was at the press conference, asked him about the pass rushers and how Chop and Idisa and DDS, the 3 of them combined, their best edge linemen have a combined half sack through 3 games. Is that concerning? Are you not too worried about it? I have a counter argument that Jordan and I were talking about before. Franklin was very adamant in like 4 questions today. And if you listen to the pod or his press conference, I apologize, but he said it multiple times that we're just playing as many guys as we can right now. These 3 weeks were about getting reps and getting guys in. They checked in 62 guys against Illinois, and Jordan and I were saying that's a pretty absurd number. 62 guys played in that game. Is that any concern to you that these 3 best pass rushers aren't getting sacks, or are you not concerned yet?
So, and I saw the press conference and you're right. Franklin was almost very defensive to that question.
Yeah.
And I think he gave the typical coach answer of, we're getting pressure and we don't really care about sacks. We track other stats like QB pressure. And he referenced that oftentimes you get sacks or you get interceptions, and it's hard to get both, right? Like, does the quarterback get the ball out quickly? Are you forcing them to throw quickly? I think like West Virginia was a good example where Garrett Green was reading one receiver and then running. And so there wasn't really an opportunity for sacks. I actually thought I was pretty happy with the pass rush against Illinois. I would say overall defensively that the first drive had me a little bit worried. It seemed like Illinois was moving the ball pretty well. Devin, I know you and I text during the games, and it seems like a lot of games early on where the defensive line is stunting and we're doing all these exotic things. And there's a drive or two where it seems like, man, there's some big holes on that defensive front and when they're running the ball well. And then it kind of settles down and then guys are playing their gaps and that gap integrity comes back. So I think it's one of those things where I'm as guilty of anybody as sort of overreacting and only focusing on the positives. And I think we're seeing a lot of in-game adjustments that we're not giving enough credit for. But back to your original question about the pass rush, I thought the Illinois game, it finally showed up where Adisa Isaac and Chop were getting a lot of good pressure. Again, I don't think we were getting a lot of sacks. And some of those interceptions, frankly, were just bad decisions by Altmaier. But I think he was
great plays by the DBs.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
a couple of them
defensive
were just
backs running
running
the route for the receiver. Abdul Carter's drop into zone coverage was really nice. Again, that's a guy that, in fairness, we've kind of questioned some of his capabilities beyond just kind of being super athletic and chasing the football. That was a really nice play, dropped into coverage and just read the quarterback's eyes and just shuffled his feet into, He just followed the quarterback's eyes to the ball. So it's a little bit of everything, and I think all interceptions are usually a mix of things. It's not just the defensive back making a great play. Oftentimes the quarterback is making a bad throw, or the defensive front is accumulating pressure over the game, or maybe it doesn't even show up on that play, but just consistent pressure. It makes the quarterback's clock just move faster. And so I do agree. I think I was a little concerned through the first 2 games, but I was pretty pleased with the pass rush against Illinois.
Yeah, I agree. And one stat I saw, and might have wrote this down wrong, but because it seems ridiculous, no Iowa wide receiver has more than 75 receiving yards on the year. That's
their leading wide
crazy.
receiver. Their leading wide receiver has 68 yards, I think. Let me check my stats here. I just had him up.
Yeah, that's Seth Anderson on only 4 catches, and Ragaini, and he's like a 5th-year senior. He's been around forever, and he's a solid player. He's not gonna wow you, but they've got a combined. They're the 2. Actually, they only have 3 guys who are listed as wide receivers who have caught a pass. 4, and they have 4, 5, and 3 receptions. Whereas there's 1, 2, 3, 4 tight ends that have caught a pass, and a bunch of running backs that have caught passes. So they're and the number 1 receiver of all of them is Luke Lachey, who we mentioned being out. He has 10 catches through 3 games. So on paper, it's a horrible mismatch. The quarterback's a little dinged up, not been playing well. They don't really have any offensive weapons through the air that scare you. And we have, as we've continued to bang the drum for, what I think is the best secondary perhaps in the country. So on paper, it's a horrible mismatch for Iowa.
Yeah, I agree. I think for Iowa to be successful, they need to make short and intermediate passing to have success, and just don't try to stretch the field, because I think our safeties and corners, that's where you're going to get into trouble. McNamara really doesn't have the arm to do that. So if they can, dink and doink down the field, that's where they're going to probably have success. But with the weather, who knows what the passing conditions are going to be like. If it's torrential downpour, they may just, try to run the ball over and over again, which they had success last weekend. Now, granted, that's not Penn State's defense, but we'll see. Do you guys have anything else on Iowa?
Defensively, we always like to try to give some names to watch. A couple names that really stood out to me. Their leading tackler is their middle linebacker, Jay Higgins. Really good, solid player. Their defensive end, Joe Evans, I think he wears number 13. He has looked really impressive to me. I watched a lot of the Western Michigan game. I know Jordan said he went back and watched all 3. I watched a little bit of Utah State and most of Western Michigan. I think Joe Evans looked really impressive to me. He has like 4 or 5 QB hurries and a couple sacks, I think, this year, if I remember right. 1 sack, 2 TFLs. He's a name that I think could get into the backfield and be a problem at some points. And then Zach mentioned him, but the obvious name that everyone should be looking out for is Cooper DeJean. I think he might be the best cornerback in all of America, other than maybe 2 at Penn State. He's listed right now as maybe a late first-round draft pick, which would be pretty impressive. If he is on KLS, that concerns me a little bit because of some of the problems we've had at wide receiver so far this year. And if Trey Wallace is still out, which obviously Franklin never talks about injuries, so we won't know until Saturday at 7:15 whether or not he's playing, probably. But if he's out, that puts Cooper DeJean maybe matched up with KLS a lot. And then you're looking at, can Malik not drop passes? Can Liam Clifford get open? Can we utilize our tight end? So I know Zach brought this up at the Illinois one, is Iowa does a lot of things that Illinois did, but better, especially their secondary. And I think that Aller's not going to get away with mistakes. If Aller's going to throw a pick, it's probably going to be this week. And I hope that if he does, and he probably will, I'm just going to put that out there, that he can bounce back quick and bury it and move on. And as a quarterback at a high level, you got to imagine he has that quick reset button in his brain. But it's going to be loud. It's going to be crazy in the whiteout, and it's easy to get flustered if you make a mistake. And I think you said that your key to the game, Jordan, was could Iowa move the ball offensively? My key to the game would be, can Iowa pressure and rattle Drew Aller in this huge environment that he had? I mean, yeah, he had one drive last year against Minnesota when it was over. Can they rattle him? Because I think that this is a game where Allard could struggle if the situation is right. So that would be my key to the game.
Yeah, and it's kind of building with the weather looking bad. Like, it's all kind of coming together where we could see Allard maybe struggle this weekend. I hope not, but you never know. Yeah. You never know until it happens, because he hasn't thrown an interception yet.
Nope,
correct?
not yet.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
maybe he doesn't think of that, in his mind, in his sphere that he's in, but I know fans think about it. Like, when is it going to happen?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
my overall takeaway, just to kind of to answer your question and maybe wrap up my thoughts, but I think this is a game where Penn State, if your defense is again sort of what you think it is, and I'm content with an Illinois style win in this game where you just come out and you say I don't trust Iowa to move the ball through the air. I just talked a minute ago about how sometimes the risk reward nature, the aggressive nature of Manny Diaz's defense gets me a little worried sometimes, but I think this is a game where you stack the box, you stop the run, you line up, you trust your corners, and you say beat us through the air. One of your no-name receivers, one of your tight ends is going to have to beat a Daquan Hardy or a Kalen King or Curtis Jacobson coverage, and just pressure McNamara all night, keep the box loaded, because I think their best chance of offensive success is kind of just run the ball and dink and dunk it down the field. And I think if you let them do that, you're letting them play into their best chance of success. And I just think that you can sort of out athlete them offensively. I would be content with a game. I want to see more than we saw in the Illinois game, but I think if you can run the ball and Allard doesn't turn the ball over, that's probably enough to win, because you're going to trust your defense to. If you're Allard, you just got to avoid the big mistake, right? Iowa is another team that's. We keep talking about the explosive plays. All the questions for Franklin today were about where are the explosive plays. You're probably not going to get them against Iowa, because they're built. They're not a feast or famine defense. They're built to just take away your best stuff, to take away big plays and make you work the ball down the field. And I think so. Just keep doing what you're doing, right? And if we're not getting explosive plays, you're not getting explosive plays. Are we running the ball consistently? I think we mostly have been. It just doesn't look sexy the way that we're doing it.
All right, great transition. Let's go to our predictions. I think it's not going to be a crazy blowout, but I think we win 24-9. So I think they kick 3 field goals. We score 3 probably on the ground, maybe a goal line pass, and then we kick a field goal. So,
and they get 3 field goals?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they'll be able to move the ball a little bit and get into field goal range. Especially early, we haven't looked good in games defensively, and maybe that's part of the scheme. But I think they probably go down and score or a field goal on their first drive, struggle offensively, turn the ball over, and then we kind of just take care of business.
I'll go. I'm going to actually make a lot of people mad if they're going to gamble on this game. I'm going to go Penn State 20, Iowa 6. So take Iowa against the spread.
Hammer the under.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's going to be under.
The under's like 42, I think.
I think Penn State is better, and I think that realistically Penn State should cover that spread. But it's Iowa, and Iowa does weird things, and weird things happen. I don't think their offense can score. I really don't. I mean, for 2.5 quarters against Western Michigan, their offense did nothing, and that's Western Michigan. And they scored what'd you say the scores were, Jordan? Like 23 against Iowa State, who Iowa State just lost to Ohio this weekend. So obviously Iowa State's no good. I just don't think Iowa can score, but I think Penn State will face some adversity, and this is a good game because as Zach mentioned, and maybe he'll say something here too, the next few weeks probably won't be much adversity. So I think that facing some adversity this weekend could be really good and really important for down the road. So I'm going to go 20-6.
Yeah, so I'm going to go 28-7. I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic than I have been. I look at these the Illinois game and the Iowa game kind of in conjunction, and I see an Iowa team that's probably going to be fairly similar to Illinois and Iowa. I think are very similar. I think what's different is The Iowa secondary might be a little bit better, but I don't think they have anybody on the defensive line that's like a Johnny Newton or a Keith Randolph. I don't think they have game changers up front. I think unless there's like really bad weather, Penn State will do enough offensively, and it'll probably be one of those types of games like the Illinois game where we look back and we're like, man, the offense really stunk, and they had 28 or 30 points. And I'm with Devin. I don't see, unless there's major blunders from Penn State defensively, I just don't see how Iowa is going to sustain drives and keep their offense on the field. I don't. We talked about the scores. We talked about the competition. I mean, they really struggled with the Utah State team who has not looked good. They didn't score in the second half of that game. And then all of a sudden you take away probably their best offensive player, honestly, in Luke Lachey. I don't see it. The running backs, I think, they have a couple solid ones, but I don't think they have an Akram Wadley or a Mark Weisen or I'm trying to think of some of the other guys they've had, even a Tyler Goodson from a couple years ago, where he's kind of a really shifty game changer or somebody that's really good in the screen game and catching the ball through the air. I don't know where they turn to move the ball. Maybe I have it wrong, but I'm going 28-7. I think defensively, it's a game that Penn State owns defensively, start to finish.
Yeah, I hope so too. All right, let's move on to other games around the country. We got our pick'ems for this week. We got number one game of the week. Number 4, Florida State at Clemson. I got Florida State. Zach, you have Clemson, and Devin has Florida State. I just think Florida State takes care of business this week, coming off a very bad performance against Boston College. I just think Clemson's in trouble, to be honest, and I think Florida State just rebounds and shows why they deserve to be a top 5 team. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, my pick is for I was probably going to pick Clemson no matter what. I actually think it would have been better for Clemson if Florida State didn't struggle to the degree they did against Boston College, because now that you're not going to sneak up on them. But I think two things. I think this is like a do or die moment for Clemson. I think there's so much external talk going on about how Dabo's dynasty is dead and so on and so forth. I think this is a chance where they kind of, plant the flag and bounce back. I also think Boston College is really bad. It's kind of hard to and I maybe didn't punish Florida State when we get to our rankings, but Boston College is really bad. They got beat handily by a Northern Illinois team that just looked pretty bad against a crappy Nebraska team. And Boston College probably could have, maybe even should have won that game against Florida State. So home game in Clemson, I'm taking Clemson.
And I took Florida State. I think it's going to be an ugly game. I think it's going to be a very close game. I just don't think Clemson is any good. And I agree. Boston College should have beat Florida State if they didn't have 18 penalties or whatever it was. The only thing I will say is that is one of those Boston College special games, the red bandana game. Mm-hmm. They always play to a different level in that game. No matter who they play in the red bandana game, they always play different. And I think that helped them a lot. But it is kind of concerning that Florida State should have lost that game. I can't pick Clemson. I don't think they're any good. And they'll probably win, but I just don't think they're any good.
Fair enough. All right, moving on. We got Auburn at Texas A&M, and really a must-win for Jimbo Fisher, in my opinion. Can Texas A&M afford to lose 3 games this year? Or, I mean, I guess Jimbo Fisher, but I actually do have Texas A&M winning this game. I really don't know much about Auburn, but I just kind of don't like Auburn. So,
yeah, it's Hugh Freeze has done a decent job through the first couple of weeks. Auburn's kind of been smoke and mirrors. I don't know, Jordan, if you caught any of the Cal game. Auburn actually went out to Cal and won a game that I lost in our pick'ems, but it was really ugly offensively. Peyton Thorne, actually a name that Penn Staters will remember from Michigan State. He's their quarterback, although they've been playing Robbie Ashford some as well, which is another name that you may remember from last year. That was the runner of the running quarterback of the 2 quarterback system that Auburn was running last year. They have not looked good offensively. I think this is just a game where neither team is great, but Texas A&M's at home, and maybe similar to my Clemson pick, where it's like it's just kind of a now or never moment for Jimbo and the Aggies. They play Arkansas next week, and the schedule's not going to get any easier. So to Jordan's point, it's like, when do they either turn it around soon, or he's not going to get a chance to turn it around.
Totally agree. That's why I went with Auburn. Because I think this is a must-win game for Texas A&M, and I think that stuff is about to hit the fan in Texas A&M because Auburn is going to beat them this weekend. This is also my super dog, so when we get to that later, I'm taking Auburn to cover the 7.5-point spread. No, Auburn hasn't looked great, but they did beat Cal on the road, and I don't care how ugly that game is. For them to go all the way to Cal for a 9 p.m. Eastern kickoff, I got to give them some credit for that. They beat the Samford, who is basically Delaware in FCS. They're both ranked like right around 20th, I think. They beat them by like 35. Peyton Thorne is what he is. As much as this is a must win for Texas A&M, I think it's probably a must win for Hugh Freeze as well, because they might not win another game this year. I mean, they have Vanderbilt and New Mexico State, but that might be it. So for them to try to get bowl eligible, this is a must win for Auburn for this year, and I think they're going to find a way to do it.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, third game, probably a game I'm most looking forward to just because I want Alabama to lose. So we got number 15 Ole Miss at number 13 Alabama. I have Ole Miss. I think this is the year that Ole Miss kind of turns the tables on Alabama. Alabama loses another home game. Saban thinks about retiring. Coach Prime comes in and takes over Alabama.
Coach Prime comes over.
Jordan is getting every coach fired this year. Everybody.
Fire them all.
Ryan Day's on the hot seat. Saban's on the hot seat.
We're going to talk about that in a little bit too.
Is Nick Sirianni safe, Jordan?
Is he? Who is safe? If Coach Prime loses that game this weekend, is he safe? I'm just joking.
Well, I'll jump in. I'm going Alabama. I think this is like the classic trap where, and if you're familiar, I can't remember when Joel Klatt said it, but Joel Klatt went on the Colin Cowherd show like 4 or 5 years ago and was like, I'm trying to think which loss. Forget it was one of the years where Alabama lost like one game in the regular season, and he went on and said, "This is it. The dynasty's dead." And I just think they don't have a quarterback, but I don't think the team is that bad. I don't know what was going on there. I think there may have been more to the story than just a benching of Jalen Milroe, because if you saw any of that game with Buckner or Simpson, like Milroe's the quarterback. He's flawed, but at least you can run the quarterback. And so I don't know if he maybe got benched for other reasons, but they've already announced that he's back and he's going to start against Ole Miss. I mean, again, if you watch the South Florida game, there's no quarterback controversy. Milroe's the guy. And I don't know. I just feel like Nick Saban losing 2 home games in a row just doesn't happen. But I don't feel confident in that pick. And I do actually think Ole Miss might be the sleeper team in the SEC. I mean, they alady have a road win against
Tulane. I feel like we say that every year.
Sadly. Yeah, I mean, I think the SEC's never looked weaker. So I guess.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
I guess my theory is not so much that Ole Miss is better than they were last year. I just think they're better positioned relative to the league this year, just with kind of the chaos going on around them. And again, I'm not going to give them too much credit for Tulane, but that is a road win against a pretty solid team that I think a lot of the SEC teams haven't played a game like that yet.
Yeah, and Devin and I were talking before you got on. Bo Perbula would be the best quarterback at Alabama right now if he was there. So I just wanted to throw that out in the ether.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Devin.
No, I don't.
I probably took all your points. But
that covered everything. Alabama is flawed, but they're still Alabama, and I think they're going to find a way. I can't envision Nick Saban losing 2 home games in the course of 3 weeks. Like I can't envision it. So I'm not confident, but I feel like they're going to win.
And the crazy thing is, not to drag it out, but Nick Saban for the longest time, like if none of his former assistants that got a head job could ever beat him, it never happened. And then all of a sudden, Kirby Smart has done it a couple times. Steve Sarkisian did it. Steve Sarkisian did it last Saturday. And so like if he lost this one again, that would be Sarkisian and Kiffin back to back. And all of a sudden it's like all these, Nick Saban was like the school for misfit coaches, and he brings these guys in and fixes them up, and then they go out and get good jobs somewhere and they come back and beat him. It's just, I don't know. I just can't see it happening, to Devin's point, but it may happen. I wouldn't be shocked if it did.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on. Enough about Alabama. Another game people are talking about nonstop on Facebook and other social medias. We got number 19 Colorado at 10 Oregon. Huge spread in this game. What, like 21 points?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Colorado makes it a shootout, but I don't know. They did not look good against Colorado State last week. I mean, granted, it's a rivalry game, whatever, but Colorado State's pretty bad, to be honest. So we got Oregon, all three of us. I don't know how much you guys want to talk about it, but go ahead.
No, Travis Hunter definitely makes a difference. Oregon's just flat out better. I actually don't think Oregon covers that 21-point spread, but I think it's just because Colorado is going to find a way to score. But I think Oregon ends up winning handily, just not by 3 touchdowns. That's a lot of points.
For teams ranked 10 and 19 to see a spread like that is just crazy. And I think Colorado, I think you're going to see all year Colorado will play up in all of these big games, right? You saw them in the TCU and Nebraska games, and then you saw them with Colorado State. And I agree with Jordan; they're not good. And frankly, like the whole rivalry angle, the entire team at Colorado got there like 15 minutes ago. So, the idea that they're getting up for Colorado State, I think that more than anything, the fighting between the head coaches probably was all the fuel they need. But I just think they're going to be a team that plays up to their competition and plays down to their competition. So I don't think Oregon's going to annihilate them, but I just think Oregon is. I think you're going to see in this game what we haven't seen so far, which is a team that has the skill position to match up with Colorado, but has all of the guys up front on both sides that Colorado does not have. And you're going to see what it looks like when Shedeur Sanders doesn't have time to throw, and when he's standing on the sideline because Oregon's just running the ball every play for 7 yards against that undersized, under-equipped defensive front that Colorado has.
Yeah, I agree. All right, moving on. We got number 22 UCLA, kind of a good team in my opinion, but at 11 Utah. I think Utah gets up for this game. We may see Cam Rising this weekend, maybe. So I think all three of us took Utah, but I think Utah gets done at home. They're really good at home. They have a great atmosphere there. I think their student section was ranked number 1 of all student sections. So take with that what you will. I think Utah beats UCLA at home.
I'll go first here, Zach, because I know you love Utah more. I have not been impressed with Utah yet. However, now they look like they're much better than they were because Florida went and beat Tennessee last week and controlled that game. Not just beat Tennessee, completely controlled that game. So now I feel like Utah is actually good, even though their scores indicate that they're not good. So I don't know what to say. I picked Utah simply because it's at home, because I actually do think UCLA has some players. UCLA has been solid the first 3 weeks, but Utah wins because it's at home. So Zach, preach to us why we should love Utah.
No,
is Chip Kelly still out there, by the way?
He is, yeah. And I think he likes this team, and I think he likes the freshman quarterback Dante Moore that they have out there. I just think it's hard to win at Utah. They're very good at home, and just kind of a different animal there. Utah actually went to UCLA last year and lost early in the season. I think it was maybe like a Thursday or Friday night game. That was one of the games where, if you remember the memes that were spread around with the UCLA stadium with like 10 people for like a top 25 game. And so I think there's a bit of a revenge factor. What I saw was Cam Rising was going to be like sort of a game time call. I think if I knew he was going to play, I would feel more confident, because I think they have all the pieces everywhere else. The quarterback play has not been bad. They're just not very explosive, and they're kind of limited in the passing game. But I think if he comes back and he's healthy, they are every bit in the Pac-12 race that USC and Oregon and Washington are, and it's going to be so much fun. We have a couple games that we've already gone through right now of ranked Pac-12 games, and then you look at next week's schedule and there's 2 or 3 more. It's just going to be those teams playing each other every week and beating each other up. And it's going to be, frankly, I think the most interesting conference to watch this season.
Yeah, and then looking forward to next year, you only have one matchup, so
all 12 weeks,
one matchup 12 times.
Yeah, good stuff. We'll move on. We got BYU, who was my super dog of the week last week at Kansas. I'm shocked Kansas isn't ranked, to be honest. I know we're kind of high on Kansas, but Zach and I'll pull that back up. So Zach and I both have Kansas. BYU, it's at BYU. Tough place to play, but I think Kansas goes in with their electric offense, arguably one of the best offenses in NCAA right now. Takes care of business. Zach, I'll let you go second since you got Kansas as well, and then we'll finish off.
Yeah, Kansas played really poorly against Nevada last Saturday. Did not I didn't watch the game, but from the box score, it did not look like the same team that showed up for Illinois. I guess one read that you could have is that Illinois defensively against Penn State looked a lot better. So it was that Kansas taking apart a really good defense in Illinois, or was it just Illinois didn't show up, or they just weren't ready? There was, I don't know, but I think I really like Kansas's offense. I'm not sure defensively that they're as good as they looked in that Illinois game, but offensively, I think they're going to score with everybody. You're right. BYU is a challenging place to play. This is BYU's first season in the Big 12. I think it's going to be a good competitive game, but I just like Kansas. I like that quarterback Daniels to pull this one out.
And I picked BYU because you both picked Kansas, and I think they're overrated. I think you both are like all about Rock Chalk Jayhawk now. Remember, we used to make that joke like the last 2 years about only picking Kansas when it was basketball, and I'm still on board. If it's not a basketball game, I'm not picking Kansas.
Fair enough assessment there, Devin. All right, moving on. This is one of my favorite games of this week. Number 14, Oregon State at number 21
of the season. Favorite game of the season.
Yeah, I'm all in on Beaver country. Oregon State, I think. Don't be shocked if they win the Pac-12, Pac-2 this year, not next year. I don't know. I think people just sleep on Oregon State, and maybe it's just because they were terrible for so long. Like, they're not a brand that people want to get behind, but they have some really good athletes over there, and they are taking care of business right now. So I think they go in and get the win this weekend. Devin, what do you got?
Yeah, I don't really have a ton. The only thing kind of stands out to me is that Washington State has taken care of business in the games that they needed to. Crushed Colorado State, that we just said was a bad team. Beat a decent Wisconsin team at home. Obviously not a good or a great Wisconsin team, but a decent Wisconsin team, and then just annihilated Northern, whoever they played last week that no one's ever heard of. I don't really know enough about Washington State. I just feel like Oregon State maybe is getting too much love too early. That this is a real test, and the fact that it's in Washington State lends me to pick them just by a hair, but I don't know. I think this is a true toss-up game. I think it could go either way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this has the potential to be game of the week. I think this is going to be a really good game. I think, Oregon State's strength is sort of mucking the game up, running the ball, playing defense. They've been really, really good defensively this year. I think they've got a different level than they had last year with the quarterback transfer from Clemson. I don't think he has to play great, and that's the value for him at Oregon State, is he just kind of has to be a component in the, one cog in the machine. I think it's gonna be a good game. I do think the fact that it's at home obviously favors Washington State. They probably have been better challenged at this point, to reference Devin with the game against Wisconsin. I don't know. I just like Oregon State. I really want to see them win this game. So I think I picked with my heart more than my mind, but it's going to be a good game.
Zach, what did you just send the group chat about this game?
That was actually, it reminded me that I came across this from, I think that was on Fox, how absurd it is that Oregon State and Washington State have the teams that they have this year and are able to compete to the degree that I think they're going to compete, based on the recruiting stars that their roster has. Literally, with Washington State, not a single 4-star player on the roster. Oregon State has 1 5-star, and I bet you that is that DJ Ungalele.
Yeah, you would think.
And then 4 4-stars, and that's nothing compared to even some of the bad teams in the conference, like Arizona State and Cal and Stanford, let alone USC and Oregon and Washington. I just think it's. I love that, because that tells me, I always talk about the coaches that are doing more with less, like the development that they have inside their programs, to even to, like, for Washington State to compete with a Wisconsin, right? I mean, nobody thinks Wisconsin is like a world beater in the recruiting standpoint, but they have plenty of 4-star guys on that roster. So that was something I just came across and was sort of eye opening, and
Yeah,
it's
pretty
crazy.
cool.
It's crazy, honestly.
Yeah, because USC has 39 4-stars and Oregon has 48.
Yeah.
It's wild. All right, we'll move on. Last game of the week, number 6, Ohio State at number 9, Notre Dame. I'm taking Notre Dame. I am very low on Ohio State. I just don't think they've looked great. They had a pretty good game this weekend, but I think Notre Dame gets it done and kind of puts Ohio State in their place, and Ryan Day gets fired.
Mine's pretty simple. There was too many games this week where I saw that Devin was the lone guy picking, and I kind of had to try to match that. And Notre Dame in a big game. I like Notre Dame. I really like Sam Hartman. This is also one of those things where if Notre Dame wins, I'm happy. If Ohio State wins, I can at least say, hey, I got a point in the pick'ems, right? So it's like kind of a win-win for me. But I think it's going to be a good game. I think Ohio State is definitely going to be challenged. I would not at all be surprised if they lose. I just part of me wonders too if we've overblown the QB situation at Ohio State a little bit too much. With the fact that they were playing two guys through the first couple games. Indiana, I think, is actually solid defensively. The thing for me is I actually think we are not talking enough about the Ohio State defense. I think in the years past, the last couple years, what's been holding them back is they've had the offense with all of these receivers that we talk about every year, and Fields and Haskins and Stroud and all the quarterbacks that they've had, but they've been kind of lackluster defensively. But again, they haven't played anybody, but Western Kentucky actually was a really, really good offensive team, and they didn't do a whole lot in that game. I expected them to get blown out. Like, I thought it might be like 60-30 or something like that. They didn't do a whole lot offensively. So I don't know. I don't feel good about it. I hate picking Ohio State, but that's what I'm doing.
All right. That wraps up the pick'ems. Let's do our super dogs. Devin, you're up first.
Man, you don't want me to say anything about Notre Dame?
I mean, you can.
Notre Dame is going to crush Ohio State. They are going to beat them by 3 scores, 17 points. Sam Hartman makes a defense guard the whole field. He is explosive. He is accurate. I think he's ranked 2nd in the nation right now in passer efficiency. Yes, Ohio State put together their best performance of the year, but they played Western Kentucky, who I understand has an explosive running gun offense. I don't care. It's Western Kentucky. You should have a good defensive stop against them. Notre Dame's defense is the most underrated defense right now in all of college football. And again, reminder, this is coming from someone who hates Notre Dame. I absolutely hate Notre Dame. But I'm all in on them going to the playoffs. Notre Dame has the most underrated defense right now. They are similar in style to what Penn State is doing with Manny Diaz, where they're going to give up yards and points, and then they're going to get a takeaway. Then they're going to give up some yards, and then they're going to get a takeaway. They just keep bending until they get to a point where they force the other team into a mistake. A couple guys to keep an eye on in this game that I'm really looking forward to seeing. I will probably watch more of this game than the Penn State game, if I'm being completely honest. And obviously, this is a Penn State podcast, and I probably shouldn't say that. But if I'm being honest, this is the game I'm most looking forward to all weekend. Notre Dame gets JT Bertrand back this week. He didn't play last week. He is going to be making plays all over the field. And, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, the transfer from Ohio State to Notre Dame, he is going to sack Kyle McCord twice in this game because Kyle McCord is overrated. He's not any good. He would be 3rd string, maybe 4th string at Penn State this year. Notre Dame by 17.
Shout out Jackson Smolik. Also, I thought you said JT Barrett there for a second, and it gave me PTSD.
Sorry.
The 5th or the 8th?
Yeah. Now we're on
Also, after those comments, is Devin on the hot seat? Like,
I'm getting fired. Right. I mean, Ohio State probably wins this game, if I'm being honest.
Moving on.
Let us know in the comments. I want to hear some commenters with their thoughts on the Notre Dame Ohio State game and which of us had the hottest take this week as far as some of our picks. Jordan with Ole Miss, Devin with Notre Dame winning by 3 scores. Me having Clemson beating Florida State. We got some interesting ones this week, but it's a really good slate of games.
This is a good week of games.
It was a fun week to pick games.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry. I know we're taking way too long. We got to run through these top 25s.
Devin just had to get that off his chest.
I did. Because I
feel better now.
Ohio State is not good, and Penn State is going to crush them in a couple weeks too. It's just I'm all in right now. Ohio State, Ryan Day is getting fired. I'm on board with you, Jordan. They're going to lose. They're going to lose at least 3 games this year, maybe 4.
Well, so a great segue while we're talking about overrated Big Ten teams that one of us doesn't like. I'll start with my super dog, Jordan, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Michigan is not going to cover against Rutgers this week. It's in Ann Arbor. Rutgers is getting 24 points. I don't expect Rutgers to win, but they are, I think, competent defensively, and I believe Kyle Monangai is leading all Big Ten rushers in rushing yardage. I think they have a decent enough run game. Gavin Wimsatt they are still woefully inept in the pass game, but he's a competent runner. I think if they go in there and they take care of the ball, no special teams miscues, they're staying within 3 touchdowns. Michigan, again, this is one of those things where we don't know that they didn't just sleepwalk through their first 3 games and then all of a sudden they're going to explode, right? And they're going to win by 40. That could happen. I just think 3 weeks of that in a row. I think like at one, you think they would have woke up at some point. Blake Corum's looked good, but I don't think he looks. I don't think he's the same running back. I hate to say that. I don't think he's the same. He's not as explosive. So all that to say, I don't think you can just sleepwalk through 3 games and then turn it on, just flip a switch and turn it on against what I think is a really improved Rutgers team. So I'm going Rutgers plus 24.
Yeah, I think you went out of order though, but it's fine.
I just had to get it up. Hey, while we're talking about Big Ten, overrated Big Ten teams that always beat Penn State, I was feeling it,
That'll be a $5 fine later this week. It's fine.
My super dog was Auburn. I mentioned that earlier. So they're getting 7.5 at A&M. I think they not just cover, but they win.
Okay. And I'm going Army plus 14. I don't even remember who they're playing now.
They're at Syracuse.
Syracuse.
In the Carrier Dome.
Army's always a fun one because it's
Dome.
Got to be brutal preparing for Army.
Well, they're running the triple option out of the shotgun now. So,
but it's just like that whole week of practice, you're just, especially for your defensive front, you're just like getting cut blocked all week in practice. And
yeah, I love it.
It's not a fun game to get up for. So that may be a good pick.
All right. Those are the dogs of the week. Moving on, speaking of hot takes, I'm getting absolutely roasted online for my top 25. Here we go. We'll start it off. 25, I got Colorado. They got to drop a little bit. They did not take care of business against Colorado State, who is terrible. I got Fresno State, who Devin says shouldn't be up here, but hey, they're 3-0. I think they have 2 Power 5 wins.
Yeah, over 2 nobodies.
It's 2 more than Michigan has.
I mean, that's fair.
I got 23, Kansas. I'm high on Kansas still. 22, Maryland. 21, Iowa. They're probably going to fall out of the top 25 if we do what we think we're going to do this weekend. 20, Washington State. 19, Miami. 18, UNC. 17, Ole Miss. 16, UCLA. I still got LSU up there. They looked pretty good this weekend. 14, Duke. 13, Oklahoma. 12, Oregon, which people are not happy about. Speaking of not being happy, I have USC at 11. People are very heated that I don't have them in the top 5, but their offense is good, but they haven't really played anybody. My top 10 is where I'm getting all the hate from. I got Ohio State all the way down at 10. I agree with you, Devin. I just don't think they're that great. 9, I got Utah. With Cam Rising coming back, I think they're a really good team. 8, I got the Beavers, who I think are just being slept on. 7, I got Notre Dame. I got Georgia all the way down in 6. I think Georgia is not that good, to be honest. I mean, they have a lot of talent, and people are like, well, they're, 2-time national champions back-to-back. No, they're not. That team is not a 2-time national champion team. They turned over 24 people alone last year. Those guys are in the NFL or transferred out. It's not the same team. So roast me if you will. 5, I got Michigan. Still a lot to prove. 4, I dropped Florida State down. I give them a little bit because it was the red bandana game. And if you don't know the history of that game, go look it up. They should have taken care of business because Boston College is not good, but Boston College had a lot to play for that game. 3, I have Texas. I moved Penn State above Texas this week. We took care of business on the road at Illinois. Maybe a little favoritism there, maybe a lot of favoritism. And then number 1, I got Washington. Washington has looked phenomenal, and they absolutely blew the doors off Michigan State. Now, granted, Michigan State's going through a lot of stuff, but to do that on the road, coming from the West Coast, that's impressive.
They had like 700 yards of offense.
Yeah.
It's insane.
What's Penix is averaging like 490 passing yards right now? It's insane.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
I mean, we haven't been doing our Heisman tracking, but I think
he has to be number
Penix
1.
has to be the guy right now. I mean,
absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely. So that's my top 25. Let me know in the comments how messed up it is, how much you hate me, whatever.
Yeah, you want to call out specifically who you're talking about here?
No, because he's definitely not watching our stuff.
Yeah, that's true. But we have
just like people aren't watching his.
Yeah.
So
we have way more viewers.
All
right, let me go next.
Next
Can wrap us up.
All right.
25, I have Washington State. 24, I have Florida back into the top 25 with their resounding win over Tennessee. 23, I have Maryland. I still think Maryland is pretty solid. They have to figure out this whole problem with the first quarter, but overall, I think they're going to give Ohio State a battle, and they're going to come into Beaver Stadium, or when Penn State goes to them, there's going to be one loss. It's going to be undefeated Penn State versus one loss Maryland in a few weeks, and that's going to be a great game. I think Maryland is very solid. 22, I have Iowa. They're going to fall out, like Jordan just said, when they hopefully lose this week. I dropped them, or they moved up one spot this week just because of who fell out. Colorado, I dropped a couple spots. Wasn't impressed. Alabama, I moved all the way down to 20, and you will notice that they were not in Jordan's top 25. That was not a mistake. That was Jordan did that on purpose. But I had Alabama all the way down to 20. That was an embarrassing performance at USF. They had a closed door players only meeting this week, and I understand why, because I'd be pretty embarrassed if I was at Alabama with the way that they played this weekend. I have Miami up to 19. They're new to my top 25 this week. I didn't have them in last week. I was waiting one more week to see what happened. And with a couple of losses, I think Miami might be good. I'm not sure, but I think they might actually be good. I have UCLA at 18, Duke up at 17, UNC at 16, Ole Miss up at 15, LSU at 14. LSU took care of Mississippi State this week. That was a big win for them to kind of right the ship after some questions with the FSU game. I have Oklahoma all the way up to 13. They have maybe the most impressive offense in all of college football right now. They're scoring at will, and I'm very impressed with them. They're playing enough defense to counteract the fact that they're also just scoring points. Then I have Jordan's Beavers at 12. Not quite as high. And I have Utah all the way down at 11 because, as I said, I'm just, other than the Florida win where Florida looked really bad in that game. I'm not super impressed with Utah yet, but I think when Cam Rising comes back, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they win the Pac-12, 3 years in a row now. Like, that wouldn't surprise me one bit. I don't see it yet. I have Oregon at number 10, Ohio State down at number 9, dropped them another spot this week. For wins over Indiana, Youngstown State, and Western Kentucky, you're not doing anything for me, and you might fall out of the top 25. I might pull a Jordan this week and pull you out of the top 25 when they lose to Notre Dame this week. I have Washington at 8. I'm not quite as high. They're good. Michael Penix is incredible, but they still have a lot to prove. USC at 7. They didn't play this week because they played in week 0. Florida State, I moved them down to 6. They dropped a couple spots. Yeah, they took care of business as far as winning, but they should have won by more. I mean, let's be honest. I moved Notre Dame up to number 5 with their win over Central Michigan. They completely dominated that game. I moved Penn State up to 4, so those are the two teams that jumped over Florida State. To win on the road in your Big Ten opener once again, I think that's a great way to start your Big Ten slate. And then my top 3 stayed the same. I had kept Michigan at 3. They weren't very impressive against Bowling Green, but I really, and to Zach's point, that I feel like they're really just going through the motions right now, and just don't even care who they're playing these first 3 weeks. They could have played anybody, and it wouldn't have mattered. They would have just gone through the motions. We'll see this week, because Rutgers isn't good, but Rutgers is okay. And like Zach said, I think Rutgers will make that a game for a while. Georgia at 2. They struggled with South Carolina, but it was really ugly conditions. It was sloppy. Spencer Rattler, I know Jordan hates Spencer Rattler, but Spencer Rattler can do a lot of good things. So I'm not going to penalize them too much for that one. And then I have Texas at number 1. I was high on Wyoming last week. Wyoming was in that game for a long time, and then Texas scored a touchdown like 15 seconds into the third quarter and just blew the game wide open and ended up winning like 41-10, I think. I think Wyoming is the best team out in the Mountain West. So I actually think that's a pretty solid win for Texas to win like that. I think Wyoming might not lose again this year. So that could be something to keep an eye on, if the Horns are actually going to stay up instead of falling down here at some point. So, Zach.
I like it. So I've got Fresno at 25. I think Jordan covered it. They've got two Power Five wins, neither of which is amazing, but I mean they just blew the doors off of Arizona State. So I had to slip somebody in there from the group of 5. So Alabama at 24. I frankly probably should have had them out as well. I just we have a 3-game sample size at this point. One is a home loss, and one is a utterly atrocious performance on the road against what is a bad team. So they hung in, but honestly, if they lose to Ole Miss, obviously they're going to be out, I think, for all of us. 23, I've got Florida. Devin covered it. Talk about Jekyll and Hyde for as bad as they looked against Utah. And what's weird is not only it's not that they looked bad week 1 and then they looked good in week 3. They looked bad in particular ways in week 1 and then cleaned up a lot of that stuff in week 3. I mean, they ran the ball really well. They looked physical. I don't know. I guess it's just the swamp voodoo that Tennessee just can't overcome. But I'm not sold that they're like totally back, but that was a very good performance. Washington State at 22. We covered them a little bit. UCLA at 21. They have a chance to really climb. If they go into Utah and pull off an upset, they're going to climb in my book, because obviously you'll see in a little bit where I have Utah. At 20, I have Iowa. To echo the points from both of you, I think if they lose to Penn State, unless it's a really good game and they really keep it close, they're probably falling out for me. I have Colorado at 19. Didn't really punish them too much for the Colorado State game. Maybe should have, but they're just a team that's going to play up. They're going to play everybody. They're going to match what your level is. They just seem like that type of team. Jumping down to 18, I've got Duke, 17 Miami, 16 UNC. That's the slog of ACC teams that if the Clemson over FSU upset happens like I predicted, all of a sudden you have those 3 teams sitting in a position where they can say, hey, we can win the ACC, right? Clemson already has a loss to Duke. If Clemson beats Florida State has a loss. All 3 of those teams are, especially Duke, because they already have the head-to-head over Clemson. Like, you start to look at, is this our year? Are we going to win the ACC? And I think that I just think it's super cool that we've talked at large about how great the Pac-12 is going to be this year. And I think the ACC actually has a chance to be really interesting as well, which frankly, neither one of those conferences have been all that interesting over the last 5 years. So I think it's fun just to have other teams in the mix. We'll see if it lasts. I mean, it may be a mirage. It may be that UNC, Miami, and Duke aren't really that great, and it's going to come down to Clemson, Florida State, but who knows. 15 LSU. I was really impressed with how they bounced back and really beat the doors off of Mississippi State. Again, you'll see they're going to have more SEC West games that we're going to really get tested. But I think of LSU and Alabama, the 2 SEC powers that both have a loss already, I think LSU is the one that I'm less concerned about. They look like they've moved on from that loss and recovered, whereas Bama just hasn't. So moving down through, I've got Oklahoma at 14. I'm with Coach Devin. I think Oklahoma nobody's talking about them. They're just kind of sliding along right now. They had an under the radar, what I would call an under the radar impressive win against a good SMU team. They beat them very handily. I've got 13. I've got Ole Miss. I think they've got a chance to really, unfortunately for them, if they beat Bama, it's going to be a huge win, but it's going to be a win over an unranked team the next week. So that'll be interesting to see if that happens. I've got Oregon State at 12. I really like them. I'm with Coach Devin, though. It's kind of unfair. Like, I feel like everybody knows about them, which is kind of surprising. I feel like they're actually getting all of the love that you would expect that they really wouldn't get to this point. But we'll see. I'm pulling for them. I've also got USC at 11. I think Devin had them there. I don't know. That may be a little unfair, or maybe it was Jordan that had them there. That may be a little unfair, but again, with the Pac-12 schedule, they will have plenty of opportunities to impress me. And if they can, plus the Notre Dame game. So that's what's crazy too, is like the impact that Notre Dame is going to have on these rankings and on the playoff, because you've got the Big Ten. You've got the Big Ten race that could really be impacted by Notre Dame, and then you've got the Pac-12 race that could be really impacted by Notre Dame as well.
The road to the playoff goes to Notre Dame.
Well, and they also play Duke too. So
yeah,
and Clemson. They play Clemson as well. So
wow,
they're Notre Dame maybe the most. We'll say they're the most important team in the playoff race this year.
I had USC at 11, by the way.
Oh, it was you that had, yeah. I'm now that I think about it, that's maybe a little unfair, but again, they'll have plenty of opportunities to play their way in. I've got Ohio State at 10. I won't belabor it. We've talked about it. I've got Notre Dame at 9. I think whoever wins that game has a really good chance to climb up my rankings anyway.
Agreed.
Because either way, no matter what you think about Ohio State, if Notre Dame pulls that off, that's a massive win. And if Ohio State pulls it off, then all of a sudden a lot of these question marks that we've had, I think, start to go away. And you're like, okay, that was just a mirage. They're Ohio State. Everything's back to normal. I've got Oregon at 8. I really like Oregon. I think they're going to take care of business this week. I've got Penn State at 7. Kind of kept them stagnant. I wasn't really alarmed by the Illinois game, but I think it did expose some potential areas of concern. So we'll see. We talked about obviously the Iowa game. I've got at 6 Utah. I think that Florida win looks so good right now. I think that ranking is kind of dependent on Cam Rising coming back. I don't think they're a top 10 team long term if they don't have him and they don't have a healthy Cam Rising. So I'm maybe projecting there a little bit, but we'll see. And we'll see actually this week because they're going to get tested. That UCLA game is going to be for real. I've got Washington at 5. Echo everything Jordan said. I frankly just didn't have the courage to put them 1, but I think they have been the most impressive team at this point in the season. The top 4, I've got Michigan. I have to bump them down. They haven't played anybody and they haven't looked good. It's one thing if you have that schedule and you just annihilate everybody and you can fall back on we know they're going to be good and they're killing bad teams, but they really haven't been doing that. Somewhat similarly, I've got Georgia at 3. I'm not sounding the alarm too much. They came out in the second half and looked like what you'd expect Georgia to look like against South Carolina. But all in all, it really wasn't that impressive of a win. Florida State at 2, probably should have bumped them. But what I was saying about LSU earlier, I think you have to keep that in mind that we're so quick to ding a team for a 1 week, a bad game in 1 week. But we forget about the win that they had. And because it happened in week 1, it's going to start to get in the rearview mirror here pretty far. But I think LSU is going to bounce back and be pretty good. And that win is going to go a long way. And then I got Texas at 1. Devin, I won't belabor it. Devin covered it. Wyoming's good. They still should have played better than they did. But that Bama win, that's going to go a long way as well, unless Bama starts to really drop off.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like your top 25. It's probably the most realistic, maybe, as some people would say.
I mean, the Utah and USC is where I have those teams probably should just be flipped for like a realistic ranking. But they played each other twice last year and Utah won both times. So I need to see something change from USC before I'm buying in.
That's fair.
That's where I'm at.
I think it's fair.
Yeah, I agree. Any final thoughts before we head out? I know we covered a lot. It's an hour and 15-minute podcast per usual, but make sure to like and subscribe. Oh, I do have one thing to throw
You do
out
have
here.
one thing.
Yep. We are giving away 2 tickets and a parking pass to Rutgers at Penn State. Here's how you enter. Basically, like the post, I have a post on Instagram and Facebook, either one.
And
Tag one of
Twitter.
your
It's on Twitter too.
Yep. Tag one of your friends in the comments and then just screenshot. You can put it in the comments. You can send it directly to us, however you want to do it, that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm planning on in 2 weeks, we'll do a live draw and see who wins them. I have the parking pass, so I'll just have to get your shipping or your address, and I'll ship it out to you. But I figure we'll let it run for 2 weeks, see how much interest we get. I think we have like 10 people in it right now, so you have a 1/10 shot right now to possibly win it.
Free Penn State tickets, man.
Yeah,
It's
free
crazy.
Penn State, and they're good tickets too.
And great
so
parking. It's
and
great.
they're my
parking.
they're my season tickets, so they are in the lower bowl, north end zone. Great view. You can see the whole way down the field. Like Devin said, great parking. So I'll be there for the Iowa game. I might bring my GoPro up to the Iowa game and just record some candid shots, but you'll get a view of the seats from there. So make sure to like and subscribe. I'll throw that up one more time for you guys, and then we'll do a live pick of who's gonna get those tickets. So stay tuned for that. You guys have anything else before we head out?
Nope.
I think that's it.
Well, one last comment, I guess. So do you expect the Beaver Stadium crowd to boo if there are any injured Iowa players?
Yes, they
Yes,
absolutely will. Yeah. No one's forgetting 2021. Yeah, that old guy, that clown.
Yeah, I didn't mention it in my prediction, but I think James Franklin is petty, and I don't think anybody would dispute that. So we've talked about all 3 weeks so far. They've gone to the bench really early. Bo Brula has been in really early. This is a game where I don't think he's going to hesitate to run the score up if he has that opportunity. I don't know that he will, but I don't know that they will be in a position where they're able to run the score up. But I think if they find themselves in that position, they're going to do it.
Yeah. I saw this quote. It may be fake, but it was allegedly from Franklin. It said, "Good teams win, great teams cover the spread." So
sounds like a Franklin one.
So take what you will with that. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks again for watching. Nittany No Huddle Nation out.
Thanks for watching the Nittany No Huddle podcast. Check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Podcasts are posted weekly on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss one of our new shows.